Philadelphia, summer of 1752. A storm is coming in fast, and every sensible person in this city knows what to do when the sky turns that shade of dark grey. Go inside, bolt the shutters, wait it out. This man is going the other direction. 46 years old, thinning hair, round face, spectacles low on his nose, moving through the wind like someone who has somewhere specific to be. Under his arm, a kite made from a silk handkerchief stretched over 2 cedar sticks. Hanging from the string, a metal key. What he is about to do, nobody in the world has successfully done before him. At this point in history, lightning is not a scientific phenomenon. To most people, it is an act of God, completely beyond human understanding. You do not study God's thunder. You do not try to measure it, capture it, or put it in a jar. You get out of the way. But this man has a theory. He has been working on it for years, running electrical experiments in his house, writing letters to scientists in London. His theory is that lightning and electricity are the same thing, and he believes it can be proven. He moves his knuckle slowly toward the metal key. A spark jumps. That spark told him what he needed to know. Lightning was electricity. The sky was not divine punishment, it was physics. And within the year, he would publish instructions for a pointed iron rod that, mounted on top of any building, would draw that electrical charge harmlessly into the ground, protecting thousands of homes and churches and ships from catching fire. That is one story about this man, but it is not the whole story. And through all of it, across 8 decades of an extraordinary life, he never once had a university degree. Formal schooling ended at 10. Everything else, he figured out himself. His name was Benjamin Franklin, and this is his story. Boston, Massachusetts, January 17th, 1706. Josiah Franklin is a soap and candle maker on Milk Street, a quiet man from Northamptonshire, England, who crossed the Atlantic in 1683 and built a modest life with his hands. Between 2 marriages, Josiah has 17 children. Benjamin is the 15th, the youngest son in a house that is always full of noise, always short of money. From the beginning, the boy reads everything in reach. The Bible, Plutarch's Lives, John Bunyan, whatever comes through the door. Josiah notices the ability and does something that costs him more than he can afford. He enrolls Benjamin in Boston Latin School, quietly hoping this particular child might one day enter the clergy. The fees break him within a year. Benjamin is pulled out, then briefly enrolled in a cheaper school, then pulled out again. At 10 years old, formal education is finished, done. He goes to work in the candle shop, cutting wicks, filling molds, running errands for his father. 2 long years of this, and every day the boy makes clear he wants no part of it. What he wants is to go to sea. Josiah has already lost 1 son to the sea. He is not losing another. Instead, he walks Benjamin around the city to look at tradesmen at work, watching the boy's face for any flicker of interest. Nothing quite fits until he remembers that his older son James has recently returned from England with a printing press. At 12, Benjamin is apprenticed to James. The indenture agreement binds him until he turns 21, after which he earns wages. For now, he sets type, sweeps the floor, delivers newspapers door to door. The arrangement is legal, binding, and quickly becomes miserable. James Franklin is demanding, sometimes physically harsh, deeply uncomfortable with how obviously talented his younger brother is. Benjamin, who is proud and knows it, gives as good as he gets. Their relationship is a constant low fire, always one argument away from burning down. But the print shop, even under those conditions, is a doorway into a world Benjamin never could have accessed otherwise. Words, ideas. The machinery that puts those ideas into the hands of ordinary people. At night, after the shop closes, he reads. He finds a collection of essays called The Spectator and begins a self-imposed writing exercise. Read an essay, put the book down, rewrite it from memory in his own words, then compare his version to the original. He does this until the gap between the two versions disappears. No teacher is watching. No grade is being given. Just a 12-year-old in a print shop teaching himself to write night after night because he has decided that is what he is going to do. In 1721, James Franklin launches the New England Courant, the third newspaper founded in Boston and one of the boldest. It criticizes the colonial government openly, mocks Harvard, and courts controversy with a confidence that makes it both exciting and dangerous. Benjamin wants to write for it. James says absolutely not. So at 15, Benjamin invents someone who can. Starting in April of 1722, anonymous letters began appearing under the door of the Courant, written by a fictional widow named Silence Dogood, described in the letters as the wife of a country minister, sharp-tongued and opinionated, with views on everything from Harvard College to the behavior of men in Boston taverns. The letters are funny, pointed, and completely convincing. James publishes them. Boston reads them eagerly. People speculate about who this mysterious widow could be. James himself has no idea the author is his own 15-year-old apprentice brother sleeping upstairs. 14 Dogood letters in total. When James finally discovers the truth, he is not amused. The confrontations that follow push an already fractured relationship past the point of recovery. By 1723, a legal technicality creates a brief window. When James is temporarily banned from publishing the Courant by colonial authorities, he secretly transfers the paper into Benjamin's name to keep it running. New indenture papers are drawn up but kept private. When the crisis passes and James tries to quietly revert to the old arrangement, Benjamin sees the opening. Those private papers mean James cannot take him to court without exposing what he did. Benjamin uses that fact and walks. He takes a boat to New York, finds no work, and continues south to Philadelphia. When he arrives, he is hungry. He buys 3 large bread rolls from a bakery and walks through the streets of a city he has never seen before, eating one and carrying the others under his arms. On Market Street, he passes a house. A girl named Deborah Reed watches this rumpled stranger from the doorway, looking, she later admitted, like quite the awkward figure. She will one day become his wife, but that is still years away. For now, Benjamin Franklin has a printing job to find and a city to win over. Philadelphia in the 1720s is not Boston. It is younger, more open, less burdened by the rigid Puritan social order that made Boston feel airless. For a young man with no family name and no university credential, it is the right city at the right moment. Franklin finds work as a printer almost immediately. Within a year, the colonial governor of Pennsylvania, William Keith, takes an interest in the talented young man and promises letters of introduction to London merchants so Franklin can buy his own printing equipment. Franklin sails for London in 1724, age 18. The promised letters never materialize. Keith, it turns out, is all promise and no follow-through. Rather than fall apart, Franklin spends a year and a half in London working in print shops, reading, observing, meeting people. He returns to Philadelphia in 1726, steadier and sharper than when he left. 2 years later, at 22, he opens his own printing shop. At 23, he takes over a failing newspaper called the Pennsylvania Gazette and rebuilds it into the most widely read paper in the colonies. Clear writing, local news, a sharp editorial voice that does not talk down to its readers. Then in 1732, he starts something that will define him for the next 2.5 decades. Poor Richard's Almanac, published every year under the pen name Richard Saunders, a fictional stargazer with a talent for practical wisdom, the almanac sells close to 10,000 copies annually. For working families across the colonies, it is a household staple. Farmers check its weather predictions. Merchants follow its calendar. Everyone quotes its sayings. Lines like "early to bed and early to rise makes a man healthy, wealthy, and wise," or "well done is better than well said." Simple, direct, and almost impossible to argue with. By the 1730s and 40s, Franklin is not just a successful printer. He is reshaping the city around him, institution by institution. In 1731, he founds the Library Company of Philadelphia, the first lending library in America, because good books are expensive and the people who most need knowledge are the people least able to afford it. Members pay a small subscription fee and borrow whatever they choose. In 1736, he organizes Philadelphia's first fire brigade, the Union Fire Company, after watching the city's buildings burn with no coordinated response. In 1751, he helps establish Pennsylvania Hospital, the first public hospital in the colonies. That same year, he co-founds an academy that will eventually grow into the University of Pennsylvania. None of these are government projects. None of them are funded by wealthy patrons. Franklin simply sees a gap, finds other people who agree the gap needs filling, and builds the thing. By 1748, at 42, he is prosperous enough to step back from the day-to-day running of his printing business and hand it to a trusted partner. The man who arrived here eating bread off the street 25 years ago is now one of the most respected figures in colonial America. And the chapter of his life that will make him world famous has not even started yet. Freed from the demands of the print shop, Franklin turns his full attention to something that has been pulling at him for years: electricity. In the 1740s, electrical demonstrations are fashionable entertainment. Lecturers travel the colonies, charging glass tubes by friction and producing small sparks for paying audiences. Impressive to watch, completely unexplained. The deeper questions: what is electricity? What causes lightning? Whether the two things are even related, remain wide open. Franklin attacks those questions the way he attacks everything: methodically, experimentally, and with complete disregard for what the established experts think they already know. Over several years of sustained experimentation, he works out that electricity has two states, which he names positive and negative. He invents the terms conductor, battery, and electrician, all still in use today. He figures out that a sharp, pointed metal rod, mounted at the top of a tall structure and connected to the ground by a wire, will safely draw electrical charge from storm clouds before it can strike the building. The lightning rod, simple in concept, immediately practical in application. Franklin writes all of this up in a series of letters to his friend Peter Collinson in London, who reads them to the Royal Society. The Society's response is to ignore them entirely. A colonial printer with no formal scientific training, sending in theories about lightning, not serious. The French read his work instead. In May of 1752, two French scientists, Thomas François Dalibard and Monsieur Delors, separately carry out experiments based on Franklin's published instructions. Both succeed. The French scientific community erupts with excitement, calling the results the Philadelphia experiment. Franklin, not yet aware any of this has happened, is still waiting on construction of a Philadelphia church spire tall enough to run his own version of the experiment. Then he realizes he does not need a spire at all. He has a kite. In June of 1752, he flies a kite made from a large silk handkerchief, stretched over cedar crosspieces, with a metal wire at the tip and a house key tied to the lower hemp string. As the storm passes over, the hemp grows wet and conducts. The loose threads of the string stand upright. Franklin brings his knuckle toward the key, and the spark jumps. The kite is never struck by lightning. Had it been, he would almost certainly have died. What happens is subtler and more scientifically significant. The ambient electrical charge from the cloud is conducted down the wet string, charging the Leyden jar he has attached at the base. Proof, clean and repeatable, that lightning and electricity are the same phenomenon. He publishes a brief account in the Pennsylvania Gazette in October 1752. It is read to the Royal Society in December of that year. The same institution that had ignored his letters now cannot ignore the results coming in from France and from his own published account. In 1753, the Royal Society awards Franklin the Copley Medal, their highest scientific honor. Universities across Britain and Europe line up to give honorary degrees to the man they once dismissed. He becomes Dr. Franklin, and every letter addressed to him for the rest of his life carries that title. By the mid-1750s, the relationship between Britain and its American colonies was deteriorating steadily. London keeps imposing new taxes and new restrictions. The colonies keep objecting. Pennsylvania needs someone to go to London and make their case to the people who hold actual power. Then Franklin was sent. He arrived in 1757, age 51, and what was expected to be a short diplomatic mission took nearly 2 decades. For years he genuinely believed a peaceful resolution was possible. Britain is not a villain in his mind at this stage. It is a stubborn institution that needs to be reasoned with. So he attends parliamentary debates, meets with ministers over dinner, writes essays and letters, builds relationships across the British political establishment. In 1766, his testimony before the House of Commons on the Stamp Act is one of his finest performances. Parliament had imposed the act the previous year, taxing colonial newspapers, legal documents and pamphlets without the consent of colonial assemblies. Franklin fields over 170 questions from members of Parliament across a single session, explaining clearly and without aggression why the colonies view this as a violation of their rights as British subjects. The Parliament repeals the Stamp Act shortly after. It feels like a victory, not a solution. New taxes arrive, new grievances accumulate. The distance between what London is willing to offer and what the colonies are willing to accept keeps widening. Then came January 29, 1774. The moment everything shifts. Franklin is summoned before the Privy Council in a room called the Cockpit, and for over an hour, in front of a packed audience of lords and ministers, the Solicitor General of Great Britain, Alexander Wedderburn, delivers a sustained personal attack. He calls Franklin a thief, a liar, an agitator. He mocks him, ridicules him, holds him up for the room's contempt, while the audience laughs. Franklin stands and takes all of it without a single word in response. His face reveals nothing. Not anger, not embarrassment, not hurt. Just a wall of calm dignity that the assembled lords cannot crack, no matter how hard Wedderburn pushes. When it ends, he walks out and never speaks about it in public. But the people close to him notice something. After the Cockpit, the man who spent 17 years trying to keep America inside the British Empire is quite tired of trying. The question is no longer whether, only when and how. In March of 1775, Franklin boarded a ship back to America. He arrives to find that war has already begun. Lexington and Concord happened while he was at sea. The colonies are no longer filing complaints. They are fighting. 69 years old, Gout-ridden and exhausted from nearly 2 decades abroad, Benjamin Franklin arrives home and immediately gets back to work. Back in Philadelphia, Franklin is immediately elected to the Second Continental Congress. He joins a committee of 5 men tasked with drafting a formal declaration of independence from Britain, of which the other members include John Adams, Thomas Jefferson, Roger Sherman, and Robert Livingston. Jefferson does the primary drafting. Franklin's most significant direct contribution is small in length but enormous in impact. He suggests changing phrases and making corrections. The changes are not cosmetic. It moves the foundation of the argument from religious authority to natural reason, from God to logic. It is exactly the kind of precise, consequential edit that only someone who has spent 50 years mastering language would make. On August 2, 1776, the Declaration of Independence was formally signed. When John Hancock reportedly warns the assembled delegates that they must all hang together, Franklin's response is immediate. Yes, we must indeed all hang together, or most assuredly we shall all hang separately. But the declaration alone would not win a war. To stand any chance against Britain, America needs a powerful ally. Specifically, it needs France. The Congress looks at the problem and at the man. Franklin is already the most famous American on earth. In Europe, and particularly in France, the philosopher who built a republic from scratch, the living embodiment of what the European Enlightenment was arguing for. That reason, not birth, not blood, not title, is the true measure of a man. In December that same year, at 70 years old, suffering from gout so severely that ocean travel is genuinely painful, Franklin boards a ship for France. In Paris, he was given a grand welcome. His face is on medallions, snuff boxes, and engravings sold throughout the city. When he appears at salons and scientific gatherings, crowds form. Intellectuals want to debate him. Noblewomen want to meet him. Franklin understands exactly what is happening and uses it deliberately. While every other diplomat arriving at the French court dresses to compete with French elegance, Franklin shows up looking like himself, simply dressed. He plays the part of the wise man from the wilderness, and France cannot get enough of it. Behind the charming dinners and the celebrated appearances, the actual diplomacy is grinding, difficult, and repeatedly on the verge of collapse. France is sympathetic to America, but genuinely afraid of Britain. A formal alliance means open war with the world's dominant naval power. Several ministers tell Franklin they need more time, more evidence that America can actually survive this fight. Franklin kept waiting. He keeps the American cause alive in Parisian conversation across 2 years of uncertainty, all while the Continental Army is losing ground back home. Then, in December of 1777, the news arrived from America that Franklin had been watching for. General John Burgoyne has surrendered his entire British Northern Army at Saratoga, New York, 7,000 men and all their equipment. This was the first major American victory of the war. France's position changes almost overnight. On February 6, 1778, Franklin sat at a table in the Hôtel de Crillon in Paris and signed 2 treaties simultaneously: the Treaty of Amity and Commerce, by which France formally recognizes the United States as an independent nation, and the Treaty of Alliance, a defensive pact committing France to military support against Britain. French money, French troops, and crucially, the French Navy will now enter the war. Without them, historians broadly agree, American independence is far from certain. The Battle of Yorktown in 1781, the engagement that effectively ends the war, is won with substantial French naval support, cutting off British retreat. The war ended formally on September 3, 1783, when Franklin, John Adams, and John Jay signed the Treaty of Paris with Britain, which acknowledged American independence and also set the boundaries of the new nation from the Atlantic coast down to the Mississippi River. When Thomas Jefferson arrives in Paris in 1785 to take over from Franklin as the new American minister, French Foreign Minister Vergennes asks, "Is it you who replaces Dr. Franklin?" Jefferson answers, "No one can replace him, sir. I am only his successor." Benjamin Franklin still holds a major record that no other figure in American history can match. He is the only person to have signed all four of the documents that created the United States. The Declaration of Independence in 1776, which announced to the world that America intended to be free. The Treaty of Alliance with France in 1778, which gave America the military strength to fight. The Treaty of Paris in 1783, which ended the war and locked in American independence on the world stage, and the United States Constitution in 1787, which gave the new country its laws, its structure, and its future. That final one, the Constitution, very nearly did not get signed at all. By 1787, the new American government was already struggling. The Articles of Confederation, the framework set up during the war, are proving too weak to hold the country together. A convention is called in Philadelphia to draft something new and stronger. 55 delegates were in attendance representing 12 of the 13 states at the time. Franklin, who was 81 years old by this time, was the oldest delegate by 20 years. His body is so deteriorated from kidney stones and pleurisy that he arrives at the Pennsylvania State House carried in a sedan chair by prisoners from the local jail, one of the only vehicles smooth enough to spare him the pain of cobblestones. On his worst days, a colleague reads his prepared remarks aloud because speaking became physically demanding. The convention nearly falls apart multiple times. Large states and small states cannot agree on representation. Southern states and northern states clash over slavery. Men who have fought a revolution together are on the edge of walking out over the fine print of governance. On September 17th, that same year, the final document was ready. Not every delegate is satisfied. 3 refused to sign outright, while others signed with serious reservations. Franklin is helped to his feet as he delivers a message. No document written by human beings will ever be perfect. This one is remarkably good. Sign it, take it to the states, and trust that the process of amendment will handle what time reveals to be wrong. It works. 39 delegates sign. The Constitution goes out to the states for ratification. As Franklin leaves the building, a woman named Elizabeth Powell reportedly stops him on the steps and asks, "Well, Dr. Franklin, what have you given us, a republic or a monarchy?" Franklin looks at her and says, "A republic, if you can keep it." By 1789, his body was finally surrendering. Kidney stones that have been a problem for years now cause constant pain. Pleurisy makes breathing difficult, and most days Franklin is confined to bed rest. Yet his mind is not confined to anything. He maintains correspondence with scientists, politicians, and citizens from across Europe and America. He writes about the new federal government with genuine curiosity, studying it as he might study an electrical circuit, watching to see how the energy flows, where the resistance builds. He has seen George Washington inaugurated as the first president. The republic he helped build is standing for now on its own. In February of 1790, just weeks before his death, he signed a petition to Congress calling for the abolition of slavery and the full emancipation of enslaved people. His most direct public statement on an institution he had spent his final years increasingly troubled by. On April 17th, that same year, Benjamin Franklin died at home in Philadelphia at 84 years old. The funeral drew 20,000 people, roughly the entire population of Philadelphia at the time. The French National Assembly, upon receiving the news, enters 3 days of official mourning. On the floor of the French legislature, the revolutionary leader, Mirabeau, rises and delivers a eulogy for an American, something unprecedented in French political history. In death, as in everything else, Benjamin Franklin did not belong to one place alone. He was too large for that. Franklin wrote something in Poor Richard's almanac that reads like a summary of everything he ever did. An investment in knowledge pays the best interest. Every book he read at 10 years old, with no school to send him. Every essay he rewrote by candlelight, with no teacher grading him. Every electrical experiment in a room, with no university funding it. Every patient conversation in a court he was never born into. Every signature on a document that would outlast him by centuries. All of it compounding. A hungry 17-year-old arrived in Philadelphia once, carrying bread under both arms, with almost nothing to his name, in a city where nobody knew him yet. That same man, 84 years later, left the world with a republic standing and his signature on the papers that made it. Not bad for the son of an ordinary candlemaker,